Today was a lot less frustrating of a day as yesterday, as you may have watched previously, and there was a lot of successful things that happened in today specifically. Now, the title that you'll see here is not clickbait. I'm actually going to let you judge me here at the end, and I feel like I am that guy with some of the things that a negative intonation of an insurance agent can be. And I'll explain it here as we go on. The day started like any other, where I got up, got the kids to school, got to work on time. No issues there, actually a little bit even early, so I got some of the to-dos done and emails done before the workday started. I stared at my headset and I wondered, do I want to make these phone calls today? And it was one of those days where I was ready. I had not done them the day before, and I was just prepared to dial my ass off. And I did for the 25, 30 calls that I had available. In case you're wondering, the results were pretty conclusive. I had 18 voicemails that I left for customers, so about an hour to an hour and a half of dialing. I had 5 that were no contact, 2 not interested, which is even more important because now I don't have to chase somebody. 1 interested, which really wasn't the one that we'll talk about, and 1 wrong number. Before I was about to hang up the line, I got a call from a very important person. His name was Michael. And Michael is my lead generation advocate. We purchase 20 leads or more a day from them across the 3 agents that we have, and we really have had some struggles with leads lately. When we first started their program, it was amazing. We were getting all of the high quality, all of the tons of leads, but we were paying a lot of extra cost. We ended up doing a budget to where it was less expensive if we buy more of them, so we got that discounted price. Even though they were the same leads, getting them in the right fit organizationally, in the right group or profiles, was a little bit of struggle, and this week was no feat for that. I quickly realized that the last 2 weeks, about a third of all of our leads weren't actually what they said they were. You can purchase filters on leads and say, I want to get homeowners that are age 35 to 55, or I want to get people that have had insurance for 3 years, or I want to talk to this type of person. There are some things that you can't do in the industry, which is choosing males over females or vice versa, because that is discriminatory in that industry. So our guidelines for that are pretty simple. The other part that we struggle with, and that I personally had an issue with, was that I can't filter out more than 3 filters or I have to pay extra. I'm pretty cheap when it comes to leads, so I'd rather buy a nice lead with less filters and be willing to lose 1 or 2 of them, because it's going to even out over the period of months and months and months. Now, with this specific type of profile that we had created, we noticed that in the last 2.5 weeks, the leads weren't coming in correctly. They were given to us the way that we had filtered them, but the filter was more of a scam than it was a helpful tool. In this case, we had filtered out people that had no prior insurance. So they had to have had at least prior insurance with no major violations. I didn't top off my filter, so I picked an age range that I thought would be good, and those were my 3 pieces. Now, lead vendors will tell you that all of the leads are great and they're fine and dandy, and we only advertise in the utmost fashion of the world. But what I can only imagine is happening is the actual lead itself is getting a default. If you've ever filled out a form or created a form, you can choose to require the answer on a specific field. But if you leave a default and don't require it to be answered, you'll get some of the readings that I've gotten in my past forms. For example, I have a form that I don't require you to put your birthday in. It has a birthday there, so it's wrong, but if you don't do it, then I'm going to get my default birthday. And that actually happens about a third of the time, which coincidentally coincides with this exact scenario that we're having. People are filling out these forms, but their prior insurance is not listed or other. Some are coming from State Farm and Progressive and Allstate and all of those companies, which is gold in my world and music to my ears. Those are what I want. But every time I see a other or not listed, that tells me that odds are that form was defaulted to having it there. And it's not required that the person changes it when they fill out that answer. If you haven't guessed it already, we're getting leads that at about a third of the ones we're buying are actually not insured, and the risk is a lot higher than we wanted. It's not that we care whether they're not insured. There's reasons we actually appreciate that, where you don't have a car, or if you're a person that just missed a bill but you haven't switched insurances in several years, that's kind of a fluke. It's a one-off mistake. But if you typically look at a non-insured person, like I said, not that any of them are bad, you find that a lot of them have switched insurances 3, 4, 5 times in the last 5 years. So every other year or every year, they're going to a new company because the prices keep changing on them. They don't trust them. And you can see it clear as day if you look at any of my videos on YouTube where it is insurance-based. There's a lot of people yelling scam and all of that stuff where they say the prices constantly change. They rip you off. They get you in at one price and they're raising it another. The thing that a lot of people don't realize is when you're quoting a customer, if you give them lower coverage than they have today, it makes the price cheaper. Duh, right? The part that they don't realize is the reason it's getting cheaper is because it's lowering the risk of the insurance company. So when that policy renews at that lower liability, more often than not, that liability has gone lower in risk, but when it renews, it's now even with the same risk that it had before. Well, that risk is a higher risk because now the chances of them filing a claim at that lower level has increased. Can they fix it? Sure. They pay more for a while, get a higher coverage, but then it renews at the higher risk, which is a lower bucket, we'll say. There's tiers or lower tier of risk. And that's where a lot of people don't understand. I try to convey it as much as possible, but it's hard to understand from an insurance agent, the salesman trying to push you into higher premium just because it's going to be better. How do I know? I just got to trust them, blind faith. That is not the case with most of the customers that you get that haven't had insurance for a while and have bounced around to different people. 1, they don't trust you. 2, they're typically rude. And not the final, but the other main piece that you see is they're a billing nightmare. They have problems, they cancel, they need to switch dates. It's just constant upkeep and updating. Now that's the scenario where it's that type of person. And that's not what we're talking about in the video where I'm that type of agent, but that just tends to be the profile. It might sound like I'm condescending and I hate the type of person like that, and I don't. As a business owner, I don't appreciate it or want it, but as a person, I understand it. I get it. Maybe no one taught them the insurance rules and all of that. Like I reason it in my mind to where I'm empathetic on the situation, but it doesn't mean it's a fit for my agency. The phone call quickly turned in from dread to more of an exciting piece because we were able to hone that in and understand it. Now I can task myself with the importance of finding the previous sales that we've had so I can tie them to the platforms or to the profiles that we've written before. Where are we getting the most sales and how can we improve that? How can we tweak our profiles through our lead generation to make it better? After that phone call, I felt like I was empowered. I was ready to go and tackle the world, but then I got a phone call. And if you know me very well, I actually dread my own phone calls a little bit. I am well versed in sales and talk pass and all of that, but something about creating your own leads on a YouTube page and generating content that gets interest, it's almost embarrassing to talk to the people, and now you've got to face all of the scenarios that you've come up with and explain to somebody and almost live up to the hype of the person. Most of my videos aren't pre-recorded and planned out in the extent of not knowing the information, so I'm comfortable with talking about the coverage, but it's still a little bit nerve-wracking to start somebody from ground zero and have that expectation that they know me, they've seen me, they've watched videos of mine, and so the rapport might have already been built. To my excitement, the rapport was built. I had a great conversation, and even though I didn't land the sale at that moment, I got the customer to understand that, hey, it's not just getting the cheapest deal. There were cheaper bids out there, and I was not the cheapest price. I did end up getting the sale the same day. She left it with she wanted to talk to another agent, and I was perfectly fine with that. I'm not turning on my hardcore salesman, you can't get off the phone unless you buy. It's just not the style that our agency is going after. Once I explained to her the different scenarios, I put the one question that she should be considering because I said, let me ask you a question. Why do you think that price is cheaper with the other company? It could be that they're a better fit, and I empower you to go check it and verify. But if it is because of the coverage, if they're giving you less medical in our state and they're giving you lower liability limits, which I'm 60 to 70% sure they are, if they're taking off this and removing that, and yes, it is cheaper, and I can beat that price too, but do you want them to be your agent? Is that the type of client that you want to be and put your trust and your financial protection under somebody that is more interested in just giving you the cheapest price versus actually asking you what we did and going over the coverage that would be a better fit? Within about 10 minutes, she called back and purchased the policy. It sounds like that was the scenario, and she wanted the agent that was more focused on her as a client than just getting her the best deal, getting her in the door, and just hoping that she stays. That was the wonderful close of the day, but it was only 3 o'clock. And I still had a ton more work. I ended up finding out that the new build that we had from yesterday's video wasn't a new build. They just needed the quote based on when the house was built. Totally saved everything I was doing. I had every company that I could write. I quoted one of the best coverage options, and I love every piece of it. It was a few $100s more than what I wanted to quote them, but it gave them the coverage that's going to be a better fit. And here's where I quickly realized the whole point of this video is, am I that agent? When you talk about an agent, and most agents that I've dealt with, and I've trained some, and unfortunately I'm sorry if I trained you this way, it's about quick, speed, price. You can beat a company on price half the time in our industry. Most of the time someone's with a State Farm or a Farmers or an Allstate. And if that's the case, they only have the one option. You've got 4, 5, 10, 12, whatever your agency has, and there's a good chance that you're going to beat it. And I have always taught, do they get it, want it, and need it? If they don't get it, they don't want it, and they don't need it, then they shouldn't be a client. But if they do get it, they do want it but can't afford it, and they don't need it. So if I offer a customer some options and I say, here's the quote that I would recommend, here's the coverages that I have, I usually mimic similar to what I carry just so I can compare and give them an example of what I felt and what I've been through. And then if they're still not into that and they want lower options where maybe they aren't covered for certain scenarios, I'm not going to tell them no. I've given them their option, and that's where I am that agent. I let the customer decide what is best for them. That's one thing I've always been jealous of some of you incredible agents who are that mom or dad type. I am a dad and I'm stern, but when it comes to customers, I feel like they should have their own handle. And if I've given them their options and I clearly feel like they've understood it, they choose lower. Who am I to decide that that's not okay? Other friends and agents, I may lose you here, but some of you I am jealous of the empowerment that you have to be like, no, you shouldn't do this. No, you got to do this. No, you got to do that. I'm that agent. Let me know in the comments below if you think that's necessarily a bad thing to let the customer, given the choices, find if they're more protected or they're getting the better price. And that's what I'm ending a successful day with: a sale, phone calls, a lot of rejection, and I'm great with that. I missed my nighttime phone calls, so tomorrow will hopefully be a little bit better of an organized day. Also, let me know what tips you have that you think would make the difference. When you've given a customer both options, higher coverage, better protection, or lower price, they choose the lower price. Do you combat that? Do you ask them other interviewing questions to make sure they triple understand it? Or do you say, okay, great, that's an option. If you want to upgrade in the future, just know that you have that option as long as you don't have the claim ahead of time. I'd love to know what your guys' thoughts are. It might be helpful for new agents too. If somebody wants to be that style of person, let me know your thoughts. On that note, I'm Mark W. Flockhart. I'll see you soon.